Wouldn't it be great to have a classroom like you see in those movies where the students are engaged and they're raising their hands, and when it's time for work, they're all working diligently? I mean, that'd be wonderful to have that. But the reality is, so far from that, it is sometimes so frustrating.
Someone beam me out of this classroom.
Now, that's not to say it's never going to happen, but we need to put the right systems in place. We need to put the right routines and procedures in place. And that's what this video is about. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 10 must-haves that I have in my classroom and what you need to put in your classroom in order to run the classroom like a pro. But first, let's play that intro. You need something for students to do when they first walk into the classroom. I call that a warm-up. You may call it a bell ringer or a bell word, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line, as soon as the students walk in, they need to have something to work on. Now, in my class, this is one of the first things I hit upon the first couple of days of school. But for me, I have like 3 main things that students know to do when they first come in. I have something called geography skills, something called vocabulary, something called historical analysis. But that's for me because I teach history. But whatever you teach, you want to have something the kids are conditioned to do, something they've been practiced over and over, so there's no surprise and they know exactly what to do when they come to classroom. So if you teach math, you probably want to have some sort of math problems or some sort of math skills going on. If you teach a language arts, that could be something as vocabulary. Whatever it is, make sure you establish a routine, a procedure, something in place for students to do when they first walk into that class. You need to have some sort of routines or procedures for the end of class as well. The problem I see a lot of times with brand new teachers is they don't plan efficiently. And so what happens is they might run out of material. So always overplan. Always plan more than you need because you want to make sure that lesson goes all the way to the very end of class. We call that bell to bell. The reason you want that because if there's a moment of time, 5, 10 minutes at the end of class where students have nothing to do, that is when trouble can happen. So in my class, I carry my lessons all the way to the very end. And honestly, I only give them like a minute, I'd say about 2 minutes is what I give them to actually wrap up, pack things and all that stuff. But so carry from bell to bell, carry something all the way through, and then of course at the very end, practice that. Practice the routines, the procedure at the end of how you're going to wrap that class up. Assigned seating. Please have assigned seating. However you want to organize the classroom, maybe in groups, maybe rows, however it is, please have assigned seating. If not, you're going to see problems arise quickly. You're going to see problems come up that are going to destroy your classroom. But with assigned seating, it gives you that control of that class. You can plan your day out better because you know where students are going to be sitting at. It helps, the assigned seating helps with taking attendance. The assigned seating helps with behavior problems. The assigned seating actually helps with learning as well. So that way you can place students where they need to in order to get the best learning possible. But make sure you have some sort of assigned seating. Keep track of the students' behavior. You got to keep track of it. Here's the important thing about it. If students know that you're recording what they're doing, if students know that you're keeping track of it, there's less chance they're going to act up. Now, it's not going to solve all your problems. You're still going to have some issues. But I promise you, it's going to curb a lot of those issues in your class because they know you're keeping track of it, and they know you're going to hold them accountable for their behavior as well. In my class, I keep track of that on my seating chart. I'm always walking around with my seating chart, and I keep track of maybe cell phone usage, or I keep track of how many bath passes they use. Keep track of how many times they shout, whatever it is, I keep track of things. But by doing that, it's a form of accountability, and students see that, they know that I'm going to hold them to that level I expect from them. So some way, somehow, keep track of their behavior. Collecting papers. Now, this is where the rubber hits the road, because you can have all these things in place for classroom management, but you still can find yourself very overwhelmed just with the day-to-day activities a teacher must do as far as collecting papers. And because that leads right into grading papers. So create some sort of system of how you're going to collect papers so that it's easier for you to grade at the end. So for me, what I do in my class is that we do work in a day, and then at the end of the period, I teach secondary, at the end of the period, as the students are walking out, they put their paper in a bin. And so that way they put it in the bin. That's how I collect papers. So I don't have to walk around the room and collecting papers. I don't have to worry about any of that because on the way out, they put it in the bin. Also, I do this at the very end of class. The last thing I want is students to keep getting out of their seats to supposedly turn the paper, but as they're turning the paper, they're messing around and all this other stuff. So for my class, that's how I collect papers, is at the end, they put it in the bin. But whatever you come up with, let's create some sort of system. So once again, the students know the expectations. So once again, the students know the procedures, and then that way you can roll that right into making your life easier when it comes time for grading. Grading! This is the straw that can break the back of teachers, is all the grading that we have to do. I teach secondary, so I have 5 classes, 30 kids in each class. That means every day there's going to be 150 papers that I have to grade every day. If I don't have some sort of routine down for me for grading, whoo, man, you're going to be exhausted by the end of that week, right?
It's exhausting.
So for me, I have a grading system where I do this. Students actually count their own points. So before a student leaves that day, that work they did that day, they actually count their points, and I have a whole system for that. And actually, it's up on my little PowerPoint slide or Google slide. The students see that, and also I tell them what grade they earned for that day. But students count their own points. So when it comes time for me to grade, it's easy. Because one thing, I have all the papers, and then I actually have another student, a dependable student, maybe verify the numbers. So there you got students count their own points, another student maybe verify the numbers, and then I'm the third person. At that point in time, I can just quickly record the numbers, and there you go. I can get a whole period, 30 papers done in about 2 minutes, if with that system put in place. But once that's my system, it doesn't matter what my system is. What is your system? Put a system in place for grading, so that way you can make it a process that's not going to break you, a process that's not going to drag you down. But make sure you got a system for grading. Lesson planning. You need to figure out how to lesson plan. Once again, everything will be going well in the class, but if you don't have the lesson plan down, whoo, man, that is exhausting. So for me, what I do, my system for lesson planning is I'll take out, it's a regular calendar. You could choose whatever. I actually print one off the computer. A regular calendar for maybe like 2 or 3 months. And then I will plan those next 2 to 3 months based upon what's going on. So first thing I do is I have my calendar, and then I cross out days that are vacation. I cross out days maybe there's assembly, right, and fire drills, whatever things there are. Then I see exactly what I have to work with. Then I look at my next unit I'm going to be teaching. How long is my unit? 2 to 3 weeks. And so then I grab up that 2 to 3 weeks, and I start planning accordingly. And then what I do is from those 2 to 3 weeks, I fill in the blanks with different things. So I maybe have notes one day, activity another day, something of that sort. So I will plan about 3 weeks at a time in one setting. And that setting may take a minute. Yeah, maybe a little longer. Well, a setting might take maybe, let's say, 20 minutes. I sit down, plan out the whole entire next unit, know what I'm going to be teaching, and then there we go. 20 minutes, my lesson planning is done. And then, of course, as I go through, I might change things here and there. And of course, you dive a little bit deeper as far as what's my routine going to be and what my warm-up's going to be. But within 20 minutes, I have a really good idea of what my next 3 weeks are going to be. But create some sort of system for yourself that you can put in play to help you with lesson planning. Discipline. Woo, man, these kids, right? These kids, they are exhausting. You need some sort of routine system in place. And the kids need to know this as well as far as discipline goes. So, I mean, here's the thing. It's a whole balancing act, right? You don't want to be too forceful, not too forceful. And that you figure out with time exactly how much discipline to put in play into your classroom. But once you get that part figured out, make sure you have a process that is going to be followed. One that you're happy with and one that your administration is happy with. So normally in my class, once again, I keep track of behavior on my seating chart. And so that's kind of like the first level. And then if it gets a little bit further than that, or maybe after the first warning, I might put their name up there for detention. That's kind of like the next level. And if they do get the rest of the period, then maybe I take it off. But the detention is usually only like 5 minutes, maybe just a talk to me after class thing. But regardless, once again, hold the students accountable. Now, if the behavior continues, then maybe it's actually a full-on half an hour detention with me after school, lunchtime, or something else. And if it still continues beyond that point, then maybe it's a referral to the office, something else. But the idea is that there's layers to it. The idea is that there's a system put in place, a progression put in place. So that way you come off too hard at first or too soft at first. You're still holding the kids accountable, but if the behavior continues, then you can kind of, act accordingly with that. So, but once again, make sure you have some sort of discipline routine, put it in place. Passes. If you do not have a routine for passes, I guarantee you kids are going to be going out of your classroom like crazy. Teacher, can I go see the nurse? Teacher, can I go to the restroom? Teacher, can I get something to drink? Whatever it is, they will find a reason to get out of your classroom. So you need to have something put in place, a routine, process, procedure, system put in place for passes.
Hey, where'd that kid go? I'm right here.
And whatever that is, figure it out. For me, I tell the students they get 3 passes per quarter. 3 passes per quarter. I'm not going to question. It's up to them how they use it, but they only get 3 per quarter. Anything beyond that would be a detention. Now, of course, there's always exceptions to this. If there really is an emergency or really, let's do some logic here. But overall, 3 passes what they get, and I keep track of it in my seating chart. First time they asked me, I said, no problem. Here you go. Write a pass. Boom. They're gone. Second time, I'm like, hey, just remember you only get 3 passes. This is your second one. Are you sure you want to go? They might say, yeah, and they go. Third time around, I say, hey, this is your last pass. There's 3 more weeks in the quarter. Are you sure you want to go? And usually at that point, they're like, nah, hold off, right? But even if they go, I still keep track of it. And then the 4th time around, that's when I say, hey, man, we talked about this already. You only get 3 passes. You already used them all up. So I can let you go, but you have to serve detention for however long you're gone. You have to serve detention. The goal is not to make them punished for going to restroom. That's not the goal. The goal is to hopefully alter that behavior of just trying to get out of your class for whatever reason it might be. But put something in place for using hall passes. Group work. Oh, now I'm a confession here. Maybe I'm old school. Maybe I still have scars left from when I was in school. I don't like group work. Oh, I didn't like group work as a student, and I don't even like group work as an adult. But group work's a tough one for me, in all honesty, because I really don't believe kids get as much from group work as they would by themselves. Because inevitably, when they're in that group, they're a little more off task. And the worst thing, this gets me, the worst thing, because I was that student, the worst thing is, it seems like you have a group of 4 students, you might have only 1 or 2 actually doing the work, and the other 2 are just going along for the ride. And that frustrates me because I think it's unfair to the 1 or 2 that do the work. So regarding group work, I try to stay away from it. But if I have to do it, or if I decide to do it for certain activities, there's a system put in place. And the best system I ever came across was another teacher, and I loved how she did this. She would have students just like in rows, like normal, right? That's how I like my classes, in rows. And so she would have her students facing forward in rows. That's how her class was set up. I thought that was great. But then she would say, all right, time for group work. And what she would have the students do is the students in front would turn around, face the students behind them. So they the rows quickly turned into groups of 4. And she had that down. Like everything else, she trained them with the process, the procedures. Students could get into groups within under a minute. Boom, they switch around, groups, boom, there they are, and they were ready to go. So if it comes time for group work, personally, I loved her system she had in place where there's normal facing forward, but then when it came for group work, the students know exactly what to do. But if you are doing group work, put something in place for that. I hope you found this video helpful and handy. If you did, please click on the one of the links above here for more tips and tricks of the trade, and I'll see you in the next video.